My name is Whitney Cowell, and I'm a certified coach, and I am excited to bring to you Microbiome Minutes with Kiran Krishnan. He is the founder of Microbiome Labs. He's a scientist who's also magnetic, as there's so many people on antibiotics. Is it a good idea to take probiotics while you're on antibiotics? Is there any contraindicators for any medications with regard to probiotics?
That's a really important topic because to me, one of the most important uses of a probiotic would be to recover from antibiotics. Antibiotics can be necessary for many things. It can absolutely save lives, which it does, but also a vast number of antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. You know, even the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, estimates that at least 50% of the prescriptions written for antibiotics are not useful, because they're written for things that antibiotics actually won't even help. And this tends to be very prevalent in kids, especially. So it's an unfortunate thing because we get certainly a significant amount of overuse of antibiotics. So what's happening when you take an antibiotic in your gut? Let's talk about that for a moment, right? So you've got this really elaborate and dense population of bacteria in your gut that in many ways dictates your health and your outcomes and your ability to be a human in general. These microbes dictate over 90% of our metabolic activity. So there's 100 trillion or so of these microbes in your gut. When you take an antibiotic with the very first dose, imagine this population of bacteria, it kills them off by over 99%, right? So this really important ecology that keeps you alive is brought down by over 99%. Now, the good news is they do bounce back, and that's what bacteria tend to do. They do a good job of just coming right back. So within the next 6, 8, 10 hours, they start to bounce back and grow back. The problem comes in when they come back at different proportions. So let's say bacteria A is an important bacteria, but its total population in the whole ecology shouldn't be more than 1 or 2% of the total population, right? So let's say an antibiotic knocks all the bacteria down. As they're starting to grow back, bacteria A grows back a little bit faster than some of the other microbes, and now its population is at 3% of the total ecology. Then the next dose comes in, and then bacteria grows a little faster again. And so now, after several courses of the antibiotics or several doses of the antibiotics, that bacteria A that should be there but shouldn't be there at more than 1 or 2%, is now at 7 or 8% of the total population. So that's what we call dysbiosis, which is a dysfunction of the balance in the microbes. And so that is a really important thing. That's where we get diseases, and that's where we get health problems from. So it's not that the antibiotics are wiping out your bacteria and they're gone forever. The biggest problem arises when they come back, and they come back in disproportion. So that's a really important thing to understand. That's what's happening when you take an antibiotic. And several courses of antibiotics over a short period of time, over a 2-3 year period, can really create this immense disproportion within your gut that will stay with you for the rest of your life, right? So that's where we end up having a huge issue. So then the question is, can a probiotic help with that disproportionate issue? So there was a study published recently that showed that conventional probiotics, like the ones that are made up primarily of Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria, they in fact slow down the reemergence of your own good bacteria, because when all of these microbes are wiped down because of the antibiotic, you take a probiotic, those probiotic bacteria seem to compete with your own endogenous bacteria to come back. So they can actually slow down the recovery of your gut from antibiotics. So I would caution people who are taking just any old probiotic that you can get at any store in order to try to recover their gut from antibiotics. It's not going to work. In fact, it can slow down the recovery. We did a study using the spore-based bacteria to show that the spore-based bacteria actually fixed the imbalance that was caused by the antibiotic. So what we did is we took microbiomes and we subjected them to antibiotics. It created this disproportion in the natural ecology. Then we added it in the spore, and the spore fixed the disproportion. So it rectified the disproportion, and it put the gut back into its original state. That's what is most important in terms of recovering from antibiotic use. So that's where we focus our work. So we use the spore-based probiotics, and the reason they can do that is they have this capability of reading the microbial environment, bringing down overgrowing or unfavorable bacteria and increasing the growth of good bacteria. So they do this orchestration within your gut to reset you back to your baseline.
So all probiotics are not created the same, is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely different. Yeah, absolutely true. You just can't go to the store and pick up any $10 probiotic or, a big jug of probiotic gummies or something like that. They're not going to do anything. Or at best, they're going to slow down the recovery of your own bacteria. And that's going to be a problem in terms of trying to fix that disproportion that's created by the antibiotic course. So that's one a really important finding. We did our study last year, and the study that was published on the conventional probiotics and what they do in terms of antibiotic recovery was also published last year. So that that was a really interesting and important finding at the end of last year to show that the way you properly recover from antibiotic exposure is to use something like a spore-based probiotic that can fix the disproportion.
Yeah, I guess it's just like with any medication, you have to know exactly what you're treating in order to have the correct product. And I would imagine that gives probiotics a bad name if somebody goes to the store because their doctor is misinformed because they haven't met you at a conference to be educated. They say, go do a probiotic and they don't have the results. And it's because they're using the kind of probiotic that is based, what did you call it? I'm sorry,
lactobifidо, the conventional probiotics, and these are the ones that predominate the market, right? If you go look at your health food store or your drug store, 98% of the probiotics on the shelf are made up of these types of strains. And they can be beneficial in other contexts, but certainly when it comes to antibiotic recovery, they seem to actually hinder you in recovering rather than helping. Not all probiotics are created equal. They all function differently within the system, and you have to understand what your probiotic does in your gut in order to get the benefit from it. And the sad part is the vast majority of probiotic companies out there do absolutely no research on their products, so they don't know what it does in the gut. They've just kind of thrown stuff together, what I call kitchen sink formulas, and put them all together and put a fancy label on it and put it out in the market. Whereas we are doing, like you mentioned in the intro, over 15 human clinical trials on the probiotic to understand exactly what all it does.
Wow. So that's fascinating. And I really want to thank you for being a pioneer and for educating health professionals all across the country and in the world so that we better understand our gut so we can prevent disease and we can, when we're using the antibiotics, I had no idea that it just did that with the bacteria. I think this is going to help a lot of people. Thank you so much, Kiran. And I hope everyone will join us again for Micro Minutes with Kiran Krishna. Thank you so much. And we look forward to our next opportunity to learn from you, Kiran.
Bye-bye.